영제 짐벌소는 닝미장 zon을 몰음 짐벌 가자다 바거 다른 산도 실물도 돈바 되제잖아 기숑서 미션을 저기 정금서 저걸 뒤집셔는 일라 지금 번조장랑 소란데 공주 또반 보러 신지로 공주 또반 보러 신지 공주 또반 보러 신지로 샤샤샤
The answer path, profound and wonderful Dharma, is difficult to encounter in billions of eons. I now see it, hear it, receive it, and uphold it. I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning in order to liberate all beings and lights, generate the supreme bodhicitta.
정든디 샹추선회 정든디 샹추선회 레 라가장 직된 비브럭 농바 농무 찌르트르 떡버겨 샹추선화 강 떡라 떡난 도파 총장 유교와 용와 담비 춥서비스라터 떡도 존장 Bjorala Nepertera Laga, Jondan de Gipkapsara, Shamba, Dalap Shanchu Sanhua Sanhua Chimbi, Lela Gaba Nirmu Niship Tabra Shar, Te, Shanchu Sanhua Tetagala Tona, Dopa Chonjan Shava Nyong, Tambi Chup Zari Shirta, Tok of Sunjam Jorala Neperangero, Nishikan Jenab Shamba, Dalap Shanchu Sanhua, Lela Gaba, Jiktimbi, Lenam Lap Zumbri Kirwatan. Lengamba tamsilla nibirin jirwa tang, long no ba tang, kadon lap zumba tak nibirin jirwa tang, nangda yang tak birin jokba gawa namki mabirin jirwa tang, kora tokma tang tamami ba yongsun zimba li zumbir jirwa tang, jamzi tang kimdak tabar namki yun zhungur mafshi ba tang, di sim ngubirin zimba lan jikbirin jirwa tang, chigba mangbirin jirwa tang, kim sur namlar gyundub zhurin jirwa tang, wang sheper manjirwa tang, lukshi ji ngansir yit mun mangbo la jinda neba tang, kim ji shawa taglap zomba tang, de ru tagla shichir ndanjang chagba jepa tang, lemba meper magawa tang, kunni narsim mangwa li ji dribar jindu, ngumbar sheba tang, gevnyin malar tumbar sheba tang, Di zigir number tobe nyamtsin davr sheba tang, jikten bi shawa jan tagda ndabar sheba tang, murig bi mawa tagla ngumbar gabran jirwa tang, jardab shi bi jig be changbam sombar sheba la wang shi ke tsark jobar sheba tang, parur jiin chirwar tok jang dakkan chirwar martok bran jirwa tang, dondang danjang nambar ngi bi tam tagla kinbar nibar jirwa te, shamba nishi pote tagna shanchu sanhua Shanchib Sanhua Lela Gajang, Jartab Shipi, Rugba Niba, Amugba Yinte. Shanchib Sanhua Tetaglar Tonan Doba Nyonjang Shava Nyongan Jervan, Jiktin Bishar Fan and Jiktin and Debi Shavala Somber and Jero Tini. Di tse chomden di ki tsisib japan da tog kwar tsarwo tena lengan tagla nenjer jang lemchok tagle tena jangrang ndarnar nyepa chewa rang ranjer rnambaran chaksim nipan datag yin gerlong non katag karnam gi tela nishang dopar mabshi lap sangtum shepar namgi maparanjer shtagda lelag nenam kyonam datag yin Korelela ngumbur zomba tang tarwi lena jangram chambara tena yanrang korze la mirgu shut tena yankurze la mirg tena yankurze la mirgu shut niban datag lela chagbayin shtagdag ngubo tagna malembar yongsun zimba men lag gafke pa normed tondag nirfshe pa niban datag lela chagbayin kimdar jewa tagla chagbaran jir ndonzo gawa 탐진 직브르 셰드 즈입기 나운도 샤프직 젠더 yer 니반더더 레라 척바인 김기 레레 대덕 냥은 셰 용속 동물은 jer경 yidmam 종 남경 츠그너 쯤버 መንjer 데 니반더더 레라 가바인 라미 코로나 갑루 머데자 지서 담밤 텀브름 전마시 너는 여더 츠쯤 냠버른 jer 니반더더 레라 가바인 kimnaani pi lirnam shtaqsim be tenar shtaqdan dopirin jirwaarte sangtan dangnar pongor temavshida nibanda taq lela gawa yin tena dochig shina chevarin jir tena rupchur namlan chakjang jin 때르는 안군 잠기 가르면 저 니반드덕 레라 가비 인 데는 코르와 데는 코르파르치나 간저때 데는 코르파르치나 데는 코르파르치나 간저때 데님 나는 신더 등으로 저 데는 원법진더 라롱저 니반드덕 레라 가바인 데스미르 딱더 노 노스임 단 레르는 페르장 자퍼 맨저때 트리픈 트르장 딱그 땀답장 니반드 달레라 가바 딱답라마 나라마 템버 총도 켐바 남나 템시바 츠좀 네바 딱라용 척도시다 니반드 달레라 가베인 년동 찬드 세오진 메퍼는 제당 콜ар 긴드 셈시바 딱도 용돈 도드마 yin niban de lela gawayin den jitin bayi xiawan zhe rigba member mawar namlaga rigbi mawa tela gamanjir niban de lela gawayin nomtsun namla ten stagda xi wangxi nibe tetag tetsar chud mirdig lernam ngumbrn de xi te niban de lela gawayin ten stagda janji tyon to jang dagla yopi tyon nomtong la yondam dan bar namlan churwan sur niban de lela gawayin shiba ten janji mir de ni ten par dagla churtun ce lonim penam ngumbr shimenjir niban de lela gawayin ononjir niban de tgum tone ne lengan tagla sijir gapshepa khwawo ten stagda lemchugo shede shiba kan yen chutna zudma she lanstong jo kyang tsuk munzan ba ten lochen tak kyoayin gangjig lengan shepa gangjig lengan tagna shepa la tamba tak chirtir tagdar manda terta benam khemi ndar tag de lengan tagnar number pani jang thong nam ji tag de ngbai zambuler nam kanyin te tag sha denep jondon de shanchu sanwa chimbo shanchu sanwa chimbo denep jondon de la shanchu sanwa chimbo shambe ndırkıt ji xordo jondan de shanchib sanwa kangdag chu jim chug yongsar pangne le ngambar tsomba de dgna shirb shind chongjang shirb gi mambarin gerwa lag so derkıt xora tang jondan de ji shanchib sanwa chimbo shambalandır kıt gar sarto
Let us continue with the class on generating the supreme aspiration of the Bodhisattva.
那么这个讲的话，也就是说，我们现在用对着
Right now, our class is taught based on the translation of Bodhiruchi and compared with the Tibetan version as well as the Sui Dynasty's translation as well. Though the classes are a bit longer than my usual classes, but I think this is such a rare opportunity And I heard that majority of people probably haven't even heard of this teaching, or they feel that without listening to a class, they would have problems of understanding the teachings. So, since we now have the resource of compare it with the Tibetan version, it's going to help us to understand it more. This is going to be very beneficial, I think. We're having only a few classes left. I noticed that majority of you are very attentive in terms of attending this class. I think this is a really wonderful, auspicious coincidence. Otherwise, if people don't like to listen with that attitude, I don't really want to give teachings either. Therefore, throughout this whole course, I feel that you're very attentive and you've developed this mind of cherishing attitude and listening to the class, which is really wonderful. Especially this year, it seems that because of the pandemic, though the pandemic in China is not too severe now, but we still need to protect ourselves in a worldly sense, or use the various kinds of methods. I recently taught the lamas and jomos the same thing. All the travelers who come here from, for example, Chengdu and from different places, they should not enter into the public spaces such as the shrine halls and so on. The ones who recently traveled here from Chengdu should not be in contact with the Sangha. On top of that, I really hope that you can chant the Vajra armor mantra. This is quite a protective mantra and very powerful as well to protect lots of the illness. This is something that the sanghas are chanting quite often nowadays. I believe all of you are also paying attention to the fatality numbers every day. The death numbers racked till 11,000 a day yesterday, which is quite horrifying. For some countries, there are the numbers of cases that's increasing with the numbers of hundreds of thousands. Therefore, I've told that whomsoever would leave the institute in the recent days, it's better not to come back, at least not in a short period of time. If you want to travel, then that's fine. You can go and part for a little while, but you shouldn't travel back and forth very frequently. Other than that, I don't really have other things to address. Let us continue with the class.
Uh, 下面我们开始讲这个
You can't bear to watch my running nose, right?
下面那个佛告诉弥勒菩萨啊，就是因为我们前面刚刚讲的。
The Buddha then told Maitreya Bodhisattvas. Now, previously we've already learned the 20 different faults of sleeping. Oh, I forgot about something. In fact, between 9:30 till 3 a.m., 9:30 p.m. to 3 a.m., there is the full solar eclipse. It is the best for all of you to practice the Dharma. If you were to practice meditation, that's definitely a virtuous practice. So do not go back and sleep right away. It would be the best to practice mantra and chanting. That would be really meritorious. So I'd like to address that very shortly. Anyhow, to continue, Maitreya Bodhisattva addressed the Buddha, saying that world-honored one, what is taking delight in chores? Over here, the chores refers to the kinds of things that people would take up, the worldly chores. Rather, they're not the service to provide it for the Sangha or for sentient beings. In the Theravada tradition or in the Mahayana tradition, there are things that everyone has to take care of, because you have to definitely engage yourself in all kinds of actions in order to liberate sentient beings. Otherwise, if you were to practice in retreat at all times and expect all the sentient beings would get naturally enlightened, that is just not very practical. So you may have to go to the cities and comply with their lifestyle. At first, you have to and then you have to comply with them and then tame them. This is usually the methods that needs to be taken. But for beginners, they definitely need to part oneself from the various worldly chores. Over here, the Buddha then taught the 20 types of chores. The chores over here refers to the meaningless and inferior things. All the things that doesn't bring any intrinsic meaning at all. So over here, the Buddha then taught the 20 different faults related to taking delight in chores. Bodhisattva Maitreya then addressed the Buddha, saying that when being aware of these faults, the Bodhisattvas will not take delight in the chores and practice diligently on the path of Buddhahood. So over here, the Maitreya Bodhisattva said that, well, if one were to take delight in those chores, how, world-honored one, could you teach on the faults of those, of such, so that the Bodhisattvas won't do so anymore? According to Longchenpa, he said that the chores in the worldly chores are endless. Whenever you give up on them, that is the end. That is to put an end to it. Otherwise, if we were to keep working on those chores day after day, just like our parents and our grandparents, they work all the way from morning till evening and for their whole life. And at the time of leaving this world, they're still working on those chores and leaving some unfinished even. So if one were to pursue those chores, then how could bodhisattvas have time to practice on the path of liberation? And then the Buddha addressed or told Maitreya Bodhisattva, saying that the beginner bodhisattvas should observe the chores and the 20 faults that comes with it. There are probably more than 20 faults, but there are about 20 categories that is taught by the Buddha over here. The Buddha then told Maitreya Bodhisattva, saying that when the beginner bodhisattvas make such observation on the 20 faults of taking delights in the chores, they will no longer practice those chores. They would rather practice on the path of liberation. They would not squander their time, engage in those meaningless chores anymore. They would practice diligently on the path of Dharma. The Tibetan translation is a little bit different, but they both mean to practice the Dharma. Maitreya, what are these 20 faults? So the Buddha then told Maitreya Bodhisattva, saying that the first one is that one would grasp onto the inferior actions of the world. Because all the worldly affairs, especially the inferior aspect of the worldly affairs, for example, the ones who are supposed to engage in listening, contemplation, and practice over here, but there are the practitioners who rather spend the time over here decorating their body or their house, or spending time on the chores in their life, such as cooking and washing, laundry, all of those. You do need to do that, but not every day, not all the time. The Venerable Longchenpa taught in his 30 heartfelt advices, saying that if one were to spend all his effort in decorating one's house and seeking for the perfect benefit when staying at secluded mountains, such kind of chores would squander one's lifetime. Therefore, eradicate all kinds of chores. This is my heartfelt advice. I was reciting this teaching from Longchenpa when I was renovating my little shed at the time when I first came to Larangar. After reciting this, I felt that it's definitely such a waste of time to decorate and renovate the little shed. Now look at the people, how during their renovation they would think about, it would be good to have all kinds of different wood board on the wall and use all kinds of construction materials. Which led me to remember when I first arrived at Larangar, the best kind of renovation material is newspaper, and we would just glue it with a flour gluten. I would look for the different patterned newspaper, and I felt that, such kind of newspaper really looks very good. It makes me feel very nice. Nowadays, whenever we look at that kind of renovation material, we would feel, how rare that we would felt that this newspaper decoration would be nice. Maybe later on you would feel that all the materials that you're using now would be quite rare and very different. You probably have a very different feeling. Anyhow, when you're staying at secluded mountains and practice, if you were to seek for the perfect benefit or perfect kind of materials, then that is definitely a waste of time. So Venerable Longchenpa taught us that as a genuine practitioner, we should wholeheartedly practice on the path of genuine Dharma. The second one says that one will be dishonored by the practitioners who diligently engage in practice and chanting. So if a person takes too much time in all kinds of chores, the genuine practitioners would look down at them. If you're a practitioner who stays at a secluded area, but being at that practice center, rather than engage in diligent practice, if you were to engage in selfish chores, all the other practitioners would definitely look down at that kind of person. Look at Milarepa, whom practiced in secluded areas in the mountains for a long period of time. When he was about to then go into the cities, his guru told him that, yes, you can go, but you have to eradicate all the chores of the worldly affairs, and you should eradicate all the worldly frivolous speech as well. If you were to stay at home, you should stay only for 7 days and not longer than that. Otherwise, all the worldly actions would definitely interfere with your practice. And Milarepa definitely followed the teachings of his teacher. Milarepa can be considered as a role model for his meticulous attention on the karmic implication of his actions. When Phuntsog Rinpoche visited Colorado at the Dharma Center, Phuntsog Rinpoche gave teachings on Marpalotawa as well as Milarepa, and he talked about how the way of their practices are different. Where Marpa practiced in a way of the union of Sutrayana and Tantrayana, and Milarepa practiced according to a beginner's practice method or systematic way of practice. He started off by paying particular attention on karmic implication of his actions. Later, when Phuntsog Rinpoche visited Shambhala Center, he gave teachings on the Kalachakra army and how the army would destroy the barbarians around the world. He would talk about those back then. In fact, whenever Phuntsog Rinpoche visited different places, he would first praise the great masters at that center and then start talking about how the center is situated as a beautiful place and it's really beautiful and very pleasant, and started to talk about how the particular school and lineage the practitioners follow in that center, and the particular advantages of that particular school. I think this is quite important. This is his skillful means. He visited for 3 months, and I think whenever I have time, I really want to write them down in words, put them down on paper. Last year, I compiled the whole journey and put them on the paper, recorded everything based on my old calendar I had back then. This year, I hope that I can transcribe the teachings of Phuntsog Rinpoche and his visit to the United States. I'm not sure if I told you the story before. There was once a mysterious phone call that directly led to the success of Phuntsog Rinpoche's visit to the United States. It was back in 1993 when Phuntsog Rinpoche visited United States, but the whole thing started off around 1990, 3 years ago, 3 years prior to that actual visit, when he was visiting India at the time. At that time, there's no cell phone. Not everyone has that, and the commute was definitely not as convenient as it is now. I can't remember if we had telephones in Larongar at that time, but a little bit further away, there was a telephone at the government building. At that time, Phuntsog Rinpoche was leading the largest Sukhavati Pure Land Dharma practice. After the first day's teaching, right before he was about to chant the aspiration of King Samadabhadra, someone came and said that there is an important phone call, and they asked for Phuntsog Rinpoche to answer it. So Phuntsog Rinpoche right away called my name through the big speakers. So we went there together to pick up the phone call. It was from Khenpo Namdro who want to invite us to United States. And at that time, the phone's volume from the other side was extremely low. Phuntsog Rinpoche kept on shouting into the phone and said that this is Jigpong, this is Jigpong, but the other side couldn't hear it, and he couldn't hear what the other side was saying. So when I take over and talked on the phone, I realized that it was Khenpo Namdro, and what he was trying to say was that we should bring our IDs as well as passport to Chengdu. Phuntsog Rinpoche, after knowing that, then sent me to take all the 4 IDs and 4 passports to Chengdu, including Ponzo Rinpoche's and his sisters, as well as Lama Mentok and my passport and IDs. It took me quite a few transfers to travel from Larungar to Chengdu. It took me 2 days to arrive there. When I got to Chengdu, Khenpo Namdro also arrived there. So then we went to the U.S. Embassy to apply for visa. The U.S. Embassy, unfortunately, the one at Chengdu is no longer there. It was built back in 1985. And at that time, when we were applying for a visa, it was 1993. In my memory, it was rather not very big inside. And I remember that there was one Chinese female student who was lining up in front of me, and she got rejected. After she got to know she was rejected, she fainted right away. I thought, if I were to get rejected for the visa, am I going to faint as well? Because at that time, you have to be aware, going to the United States is like going to Amitabha's Pure Land. Everyone really want to go there. So after I give all the documents to the embassy staff members, I was really afraid he would use there's a particular stamp, because the stamp means that not only you cannot go this time, it means that you can never go to United States. But I saw that he had a friendly look to me because I have robes on, and he was saying very good, give me a thumb up, and then he quickly gave us the visa. That's how we can go to the United States. After we went back to Khenpo Namdro's hotel, we stayed there we stayed in his room and chatted for a while. Khenpo Namdro asked me, "How did you get to know my number?" I said, "Well, you called us." He said, "No, that's not possible. You called me." I said, "No way. How could that be?" Khenpo Namdro, after he arrived in Sichuan province, he only knows 2 phone numbers. And the first one is the office of the Water Resource Bureau, and second one is a Commerce Bureau. The minister of the then Commerce Bureau has already passed away. But anyhow, those 2 ministers were great friends of Ponzo Rinpoche. At that time, after Khenpo Namdro arrived in Sichuan province, he called those 2 phone numbers, but neither of them picked up the phone call. The reason being, many people were actually at the Sukhavati Pure Land Dharma Assembly, where Ponzo Rinpoche was hosting at the time. At that time, he felt, what a waste. He couldn't make a phone call and couldn't reach us. So he had some lunch and took a nap. And while he was still napping, he got this phone call. And after he picked up the phone call, he heard that this is Jingpen, this is Jingpen. He heard the voice of Jingpen Ponzo Rinpoche. So he actually got the phone call from us from his side of the story. And from our side of the story, we never made a phone call. We were called to pick up the phone. Also, at the time, if you remember, you were supposed to pay for long-distance phone calls. But neither of us give the telephone fee at the time. So Khenpo felt that it must be the blessings and protection from the protectors. Because at that time, we were really in a rush to get the visa. We finally got everything ready. We were rushing to get everything done. And he felt that, well, it's in such a short period of time, nobody could have informed anyone because of the lack of the convenience of communication, also in commute. So he felt that it was such a miraculous thing that happened. He had no idea that there was a phone that's located at our county. Well, it's been 30 years now. It's still a myth. It's still a mystery. Nobody really knows who called whom. I believe the year before last year, Khenpo Namdro also provided this story to Toku Tenzin when he was writing the extensive biography of Phuntsok Rinpoche. I remember that when we were in his room, Khenpo Namdro was feeling it was very strange, and he said, "Oh, so strange, so strange." Later on, after I told the story to Phuntsok Rinpoche, he also felt that it's quite rare and really quite miraculous. It must have been the work of the protectors. Anyhow, I'm not sure why I sidetracked, but this is a story of the mysterious telephone. Not sure how I sidetracked from Milarepa to here. Anyhow, this is the second one. The bhikshus who practice diligently would disrespect such kind of person. The third one is that such kind of person who take delight in chores, in the worldly chores, would be scorned by the bhikshus who practice diligently on meditation. Look at the lamas and the jomos. They really like to be neighbors of good practitioners. They don't like to be neighbors with the distracted practitioners. So, for people who really enjoy to indulge in meaningless chores and get distracted, they are not really welcomed by the others. The fourth one is that one's mind would constantly develop kinds of karma that would bound one to life and death. According to the Tibetan version, it is that one would create the negative deeds that would lead one to be reborn in the wheel of life and death. Because the karma that would lead one to be reborn in samsara would definitely be killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, and lying, as well as all the kinds of worldly chores. The fifth one is that one would take the offering of the lay practitioners and Brahmins in vain. The offering that's made with the pure motivation by the lay practitioners and the Brahmins would be in vain if they were to make offering to such kind of practitioner, or if such kind of practitioner were to take their offering. In fact, whomsoever make offering to you, they have something to request of you, and it's very difficult to repay for their kindness. If you were not to be able to repay their kindness and their offering in this lifetime, you would have to reborn in various forms to repay their kindness. Lay practitioners, monastics, if you were to receive offerings, it would be the best for you to dedicate merit for them and to chant mantras for them. Nowadays, there are people who would receive the monetary donation from the other benefactors. That is fine, as long as you chant the mantras they request for. You can't just sit there and receive their offerings. People make offerings, they have their own requests. Different people have different requests. They may say that, oh, I need you to chant some Tara, chant some different mantras for me and to rededicate merit to me. This is really important. And then you have to do that for them if you were to receive such offering, if you were to accept their offerings. So if you chant it, then you can receive and accept such kind of offering. If you don't, then you shouldn't. Of course, there are the other extreme where the practitioner gets really scared and don't want to have such kind of karmic debt. Therefore, they would reject all kinds of offerings. But that is not necessary either, because as a practitioner, there's no other source of income that could support your lifestyle. So, as long as you practice for them and dedicate merit, it's fine. The next one says that one would grasp onto all types of wealth and material. Let it be money, let it be house, let it be any materialistic things. Such a kind of person who take delights in chores would grasp onto them. And if one were to have grasping towards those, then it's very difficult to get liberated. Nagarjuna once taught that coming back and forth in samsara, when will they ever attain liberation? In fact, all the confused ones, the foolish ones, would grasp onto the wealth that doesn't have any intrinsic meaning. However, for such kind of illusory wealth, they would work and grasp and pursue for their whole life. In this way, they have to take rebirth again and again and dwell in the ocean of suffering of samsara. They hardly can attain liberation. In fact, all the grasping that we have towards various things is a sign that we don't see the nature of all phenomena. Let it be our fame or wealth or anything. In fact, there is nothing to grasp onto. Whatever you have today, you probably won't have it tomorrow. In fact, even if you can have it now, you probably would have to return it later or have to let go of it. Whatever we have it now, we're just temporarily using it. We're not the true owner of these things. So we really shouldn't grasp onto anything in this world, and we shouldn't engage ourselves in various meaningless chores for gaining them. The seventh one, it says that one would take delights in working all kinds of, engaging all kinds of affairs in this world. People would get really busy and they want to participate in all kinds of things in this world, and it's very difficult for them to give up anything. According to one Doha-san, it says that we see clearly what the path is, but we do not engage in practicing them no matter what. Eighth one is that such kind of person would grasp and would worry about one's family ownings. Let it be household affairs, let it be the materials in one's household. In fact, it is endless. If you have to work for them, it never comes to an end. Especially nowadays, our life is full of pressure. And this year, especially, the order that we are so used to about our life is completely broken, and we're not used to it at all. Let it be in the East or in the West. Indeed, it is quite a catastrophe in quite a long period of time. Many lay practitioners, they used to have a very orderly lifestyle. For example, they have to go to work, and then because they know they have work, they know that they will be able to pay off their mortgage in 5 years. But now it seems that this whole orderly plan has been broken, and they lost, sometimes they lost their family members or friends, and sometimes they lost their wealth. Sometimes I think this pandemic really taught human beings how impermanence could dawn so swiftly. I think this is such an alarm to the whole world. If we were to grasp onto our household, this kind of grasping would be very illusory and could disappear at any moment. The ninth one is that the person would be bad-tempered and have very coarse speech. This kind of person who take delight in chores, their temper would not be gentle at all. And they don't speak of the gentle language. Rather, their language tend to be very coarse and sometimes vulgar. They would curse and slander the others. Sometimes I think we can definitely see what kind of person they are just simply by observing their speech. There are people who may have some afflictions, the cultured ones. Though they have some afflictions in their mind, they would not speak them out in a vulgar way. There are practitioners who can be considered, I think the practitioners can be considered as rather quite pure. But if you were to know a group of, for example, policemen, they're very used to punish the others. So their speech and their attitude would be very different. A Khenpo yesterday told me that he's been the supervisor of the Sangha for many years, and now he's very keen on finding the shortcomings of the others. So after being a supervisor for many years, it's hard to practice sacred outlook. My collar is a bit high. Looks good. Khenpo said that his guru, Tokumoba, who was very short, and when he rides the horse, he doesn't look very magnificent on the horse. But his disciple would say that, "Oh, you look so good you look so good riding on a horse." So I'm not falling for your praise. I shouldn't wear this tomorrow. The color is really too high. In my monastery, there was a Lama whose name is Lama Riga. He's a chanter, and he would dress up during the Dharma assemblies, and whenever he chants, he's quite magnificent. But okay, I don't have time to perform like him. Let's continue. Such kind of person constantly would worry, would grasp onto one's household, and would ponder on how to build his or her own household. So their actions would be bound to diligently build such kind of household. In fact, lots of the teachings are mainly given to the monastics. The lay practitioners could also reflect upon themselves based on these. For monastics, of course, it is not appropriate for one to diligently work for the household, but for lay practitioners, sometimes it's necessary for them to maintain a good household. The 11th is that because they would grasp onto the good flavor of everything, therefore it could increase their desire. All the flavor of the five senses, because one would grasp onto all those flavors, therefore the desire would increase as well. And 12th says that one would not be delighted at a place where they cannot receive offering. They would only be happy whenever they can get benefits. The ones coming and go in this whole world, they come and go only for the benefits. As a practitioner, I think if we were to receive offerings, we should take care of them properly. We should use them properly. If we don't receive any offerings, we shouldn't be unhappy about that. Last year, a few of the Khenpos were sent out to give teachings in various places. And the new Khenpos, the requirement for them were that they should give teachings at one place for 3 years. A Khenpo I know, he said that his requirement is that he will give teachings in secluded areas. Wherever he cannot receive benefits and offerings, he would go there. And later, that's the place he was sent, according to his request. Whenever you give Dharma teachings, it would be the best for you to go to Africa, for example. I think Africa is indeed really good because you won't be able to receive any benefits or any offerings from there. I've been there twice. I know that. This year, because of the pandemic, I'm not able to visit there. Otherwise, I really want to go still this year. Today, I contacted them. One of our friends over there, and they said that the prime minister of their country passed away because of the pandemic, and they're quite worried if there would be some turbulence in the society. Anyhow, sometimes whenever we go to a place to give teachings, it would be very helpful for us to generate a pure motivation. Of course, risks as well. But I think for people who generated the mind of bodhicitta, we're not really going to places to give teachings for our personal benefits anyways. The 13th says that it's easy for them to generate all kinds of obscurations and negative karma. Because if they were to engage in various chores only, it definitely would obscure their actions of practice. 14th, one would enjoy to affiliate oneself with the Upasakas and Upasikas. Some monastics, they would seek for some lay practitioners to support them. Of course, if you want to receive support from the lay practitioners in order to propagate Dharma, that would be fine. That would be an appropriate reason to seek for such kind of support. However, if you were to do that to seek for your personal benefit and offering, then that is inappropriate. There are the monastics who are not good with the fellow monastic sangha. Rather, they're very good with all the lay practitioners. They would be in close contact with all the lay practitioners to the extent that the lay practitioners don't even want to receive your phone calls anymore. So this is also considered as one fault of taking delight in chores. 15th is that one would only think about clothing and food and spend their day and night like such. There are people who would only think about their how to maintain their livelihood of food and eat and clothing and housing. They would care about those all day long, and they would think about that all day long and think about how to earn money, how to buy a house, how to buy cars. I believe in our institute, we're doing pretty well because people don't really people don't really think greatly about the ones who pay too much attention in their housing or having cars or so on. Whereas in the past, people probably would care more about clothing and eating and so on. This is really the change of the time. According to Ranakuta Sutra, it says that if one were to restlessly seek only for the benefit and offerings, such kind of person would appear to be diligent as a practitioner in the way that they would pretend to be diligent practitioners. The ones who do not have a pure precept, they would pretend to be pure. The ones who are not diligent, they would pretend to be diligent, and so on and so forth. Because their mind would grasp onto how much offering they will be able to gain. Their mind is constantly grasping onto wealth and gain, and they would have no time to spend to think about practice at all, which in turn becomes the biggest obstacle on path of practice. In fact, practitioners, I think it would be the best not to have much money, because after people started gaining money and wealth, majority of them would start generating lots of arrogance. Of course, I'm saying that there are some minorities who would still be good practitioners even after they get wealth. But I think majority of people, when they were poor, they were good practitioners, but after they gained wealth and fame and all of those, their mind started to get tethered and same as their actions. So they're no longer free. And for that reason, they started to generate arrogance and jealousy because of the grasping towards wealth. In order to liberate sentient beings, maybe it would be good to have some wealth, because it's skillful means to propagate the Dharma and to benefit beings. But in this era, not sure wealth would be good for you to benefit the beings. How much did we used to have as a monthly allowance? 30 or 50? 50 RMB at the beginning. Not sure how people are now compared to then. But in general, I do think to lead rather a very common and low-profile life is good. The 16th, one would take delight in inquiring about all kinds of worldly affairs. People who are engaged in all those different chores, they really want to ask about the different news that's happening around the world or stock markets. Of course, nowadays, you don't really need to ask the others anymore. You have cell phones now. So, on one hand, I think this time is really not a good time, especially because of our reliance on the internet. We could use such kind of internet and technology to benefit beings and propagate the Dharma, but not sure how many of you actually use the internet to do those. Rather, majority of people would rely on internet to get distracted. Look at the world. I think we have a degeneration of faith and compassion, and we don't get progress on our practice. And the main reason is that we probably read too much, which in turn became the cause for our wrong view and the generation of the three poisons. For such reason, it would be best not to ask so much of the things, the worldly affairs. 17th is that one would take delight in talking about the non-dharma, because people nowadays are quite bored, especially when your mind grasps onto the worldly affairs. The other day we had a meeting talking about some lamas and jomos would converse with some movie language or film languages, though that they're not using their cell phones anymore. Usually their cell phones are returned to them once or twice a month. But for some reason, they receive lots of influence from movies, especially Korean movies. This kind of value system is really not good. For people who take delights in those worldly affairs, they really take delight in talking about the non-dharmic speech. And then they won't talk about the three jewels anymore. For such reason, I really think that the worldly language is indeed quite could bring lots of destructive power. According to the Ten Vipassana Shastra, it says that if one were to take delight in various affairs, they would take delight in chanting about the non-Buddhist sutras, non-Buddhist teachings. The foolish ones who take delight in sleeping, they also take delight in chatters with their kins. From this teaching, we can also see our speech and our motivation. And we can see very clearly what kind of practitioner we are. The 18th one would be very arrogant because of taking various kinds of chores. Some of our fellow practitioners, because they are very proficient in certain fields, and because they are proficient in those fields, they learn this knowledge in the world, they become really arrogant. Even when they converse with the others, they would say, no, you shouldn't do that. I heard lots of feedbacks. But I think you're only here as a staff member who volunteered to serve the Sangha. It's really not necessary for you to speak the disrespectful language to the other Sangha members. Maybe at first you had this pure motivation to serve the Sangha, but if you were to slowly turn this opportunity of serving the Sangha into those affairs where you generated arrogance, that's not good at all. According to the Sutra, it says that there was once a person who stayed in the womb of his mother for 60 years. When he was born, his hair was all white and he's all hunchback. He was born an old man. The Buddha then told the story or the reason of this person, said that he used to be a chanter at the time of Kashyapa Buddha, and he was volunteering for the Sangha and did lots of things. Later, during the summer retreat, many of the ones who attained fruition, they started to make confession, and after noticing that everyone else could make confession because they've attained fruition and he couldn't do that, he was extremely unpleasant. He was extremely unhappy, and he said that I've done so much for the Sangha, but you do not include me for today. Therefore, I make the vow that later I wish that you will all abide in darkness and live in darkness. And then he went back to his home and committed suicide. For that reason, he was reborn in the lower realm of hell realm, and later on he had to suffer in the mother's womb for 60 years. Our chanter over here, I thought it would be nice to have two people chant together so that whenever he had to cough or he had some interruptions, the other person would at least be able to step in. But he said it was okay. Anyhow, that's good too. Over here it says that one should not generate the mind of arrogance when one serves the Sangha. For example, if you're the only one who has certain skills, if you're very good at cooking, or you're the only one who knows how to fix you're the only electrician over here, the only plumber here, the only IT person over here. When the others, especially when the others don't know what you know, you can serve the Sangha. But if you were to generate the mind that, oh, look, nobody else can replace me, I am the only one who do this, who know how to do this. And if you were to generate such kind of mind, then you're really creating negative karma for yourself. You're creating the kind of negative aspiration, which is not good for you at all. Whenever we whenever we want to serve the others, whenever we generate any motivation to serve the others, it in fact should be really virtuous. For such reason, there are various kinds of fruition that's also going to be very virtuous. Have you read the stories of Ashoka, the biography of Ashoka? Within that biography, there's a story about Upagupta, who was a great realized master back then. During his time, there was one monastic who was very diligent and worked very hard to serve various sanghas. So wherever he goes, all the sangha members would enjoy to have him around. And once this thought generated from his mind, and he thought, maybe it would be better for me to seek for some Dharma teachings. Therefore, he went to see Upagupta because he wanted to attain realization. After observing this monastic, Upagupta saw that this monastic still needs to accumulate more merit, and to serve the Sangha would be the best way of accumulating merit. So Upagupta told this monastic, saying that you should then continue to work for the Sangha, you should make offering to the Sangha. And this monastic was confused, saying that I don't have anything to make offerings, so I don't even know anyone who can make offerings to the Sangha, then what should I do? Upagupta just encouraged him to go ahead and give it a try. So this monastic listened to him and went onto the street, and then he saw this lay practitioner. After seeing this monastic, the lay practitioner generated lots of faith, and right away he wanted to make offering to him. Upagupta then asked him to make offering to the Sangha. So the lay practitioner did. And after the offering, Upagupta, after offering, the monastic later attained realization and attained arhathood. So we definitely need to accumulate merits to in order to attain liberation. We definitely need this kind of auspicious conditions. At first, this monastic wanted to gain some teaching from Upagupta, but Upagupta know that he still needed to accumulate more merits. According to the Chinese teaching of Mahasangha Vinaya, where it states that there was once a person who made the aspiration to serve the Sangha, and after he did fulfill his wish, his aspiration, he attained certain fruition, and then he thought to himself, well, since I've already attained the fruition that I wanted, then I don't need to practice accumulating merit anymore. I can just go to a secluded area and practice the Dharma of extinguishing samsara. After thinking that, he thought, maybe at that time it was the Buddha then told him, you should practice accumulation of merit as how you made the aspiration. The Buddha had attendants around at that time. Madhagalyayana and Shariputra at the time, because they don't have any attendants, therefore the food around them started to get sour. So this person then made the aspiration that he will serve them. But after a little while, after he accumulated some merit, he thought, well, it's enough merit that I've accumulated. Then he wanted to give up. Then the Buddha taught him again that you should fulfill your previous aspiration. Otherwise, you won't be able to attain any realization. So you should practice in such a way that you should persist and to practice whatever you made the aspiration for. However, there are the practitioners nowadays, they do not practice serving for the Sangha. They would rather practice to benefit themselves. This is really not good. Now, the 19th says that one who only seeks for the faults of the others but not having any introspective observation. And 20th says that this kind of person would have lots of arrogance. Therefore, they would look down at the Dharma teachers. Then the Buddha said that in Maitreya, these are the 20 faults of such kind of bodhisattvas who take delights in chores.
然后下面就是讲这个安住啊，就是那我就不多吧，就是直接从字面上就解释。然后那个就安住于这个刚才前面讲的。
I will then continue with the verses. World-honored one then started saying that the ones who taking those inferior chores and inferior actions, parting from the supreme actions such as benefiting the sentient beings as well as practicing diligently. This kind of person will regress from the great benefits. These are the faults of taking delight in worldly chores. The bhikshus who take delights in practicing and chanting as well as the meditators, they would scold such kind of person who take delight in worldly affairs. Why is that? It is because such kind of person is not good at practicing nor at chanting. Now I saw that from the previous class there was this one part, if you remember, about the parasites. Remember, the ones who take delight in oversleeping, their parasites that would generate pain or create pain at joints. Yesterday, this is the verse that I wasn't so sure about. Now I have to scroll all the way back. Well, this is good still. I think that's because of the protectors really wanted me to correct my teaching from yesterday. So let's continue. Over here, the ones who would practice, this kind of person would create lots of negative karma that would lead them to be reborn in samsara, in the wheel of birth and death. They will part from the causes or abandon the causes of liberation they would take the offerings of the benefactors in vain. They take delight. They're delighted when they can receive wealth and gain. But when they don't receive any gain, then they would generate worry and lots of affliction. So such kind of person that practice these kinds of inferior actions, these are the faults of taking delight in worldly affairs. These kind of people have lots of desire. They would interact with the seductress, just like how a bird would be trapped in the cage of samsara. These are the faults of taking delight in worldly affairs. One would worry about one's household. One would also have all kinds of afflictions, would be vexed by afflictions. Whatever they speak of, their speech is not trustworthy. There are people who would speak anything and other people would believe them. And there are people, it doesn't matter how much they speak and others won't believe them. So this kind of person who take delights in worldly affairs, then their speech are not trustworthy either. This kind of person cannot receive the teachings from the noble ones, and according to Tibetan translations, as not receiving the teachings from the gurus. They would reject the others and being taken lightly by the others. They would violate their pure vows. These are the faults of the ones who take delights in worldly affairs. After this kind of person would also have many elaborations of thinking. They are diligent in worldly affairs. They do not practice the eradication. According to the Sui dynasty's translation, it says wisdom and silence. According to Tibetan version, it is this kind of person cannot engage in listening and contemplation and practice because they are too busy with worldly affairs and they're too busy with generating many elaborations. Their desire is ever burning and they grasp onto all kinds of delightful flavors. They do not have the mind of contentment. They would feel happy when they can gain benefits, and when they don't gain any benefits, they are worried or they generate afflictions. According to Sui dynasty, the following one is a little bit different. It says that the ones who take delight as their masters are just like mules, same as the Tibetan version. This is one metaphor that is included in the other two translations, but not here. This kind of person has the mind of stinginess, therefore they do not have kindness. Because they want to harm the others, therefore they do not have any kindness. For such reason, their negative deeds would continuously to grow. The next one says that since they're fettered by the vines of desire. These are the faults of taking delight in worldly affairs. They would be part from all the great teachers and get close to the vicious friends, and they would give up their precepts. They have nothing else to think about. Rather, they only think about how to seek for clothing and food. They do not take delight in all kinds of merit. They do not think about liberation or taking exams. They do not have any interest towards them, any of those activities that could increase one's wisdom. They don't want to get involved with any of those activities at all. These are the faults of taking delight in worldly affairs. They only like to listen to the knowledge, the worldly knowledge. They're not interested in any of the supermundane, the transmundane teachings. They only enjoy the wrong views. These are the faults of taking delight in worldly affairs. They really place great importance in the worldly materials, and they would take the great bhikshus lightly. They're like the drunkards. So this is a metaphor that is not included in the Sui and the Tibetan translation. They seek for the faults of the others and not looking at their own shortcomings. They would take the virtuous ones lightly and sometimes even slander them. These are the faults of taking delight in the worldly affairs. Such kind of foolish ones, they lack all kinds of skillful means. They would take the Dharma teachers very lightly with arrogance. In fact, whenever we listen to the others' teaching, or we know that the others are giving teachings of the Dharma, we shouldn't take them lightly. We shouldn't feel very arrogant, because everyone has their own method and their own ways of giving teachings. Well, you shouldn't say that, this person doesn't teach good and that person doesn't teach well. So you shouldn't do that at all, because they all have their own method. Therefore, in fact, after listening to the teaching of this sutra, I don't really make any comments. Sometimes the thought would come in my mind, but I try my best not to generate such kind of thoughts. Therefore, I really hope that all of you will not slander and criticize the Dharma teachers and do not feel arrogant about yourself. Such kind of inferior ones are full of all kinds of faults. Then, after knowing that, the wise ones, how could they take delight in practicing the inferior actions? The supreme and pure karma are full of various kinds of merits. Look at our institute. I do believe that in this degenerated age, it is still quite pure. Everyone over here tries very hard to practice and to study. Very diligent. I think at least the majority of you are very diligent. This is very encouraging and difficult to find in other areas, in other places. There are people who would practice, there are people who would serve the Sangha and then would chant the mantra at the same time. Sometimes they would be on their post and then practicing visualization or contemplation or reading books. In fact, everyone really works very diligently. I myself, I would consider I'm quite diligent as well. I have to work on various projects. In some ways, they're all inferior actions or all worldly affairs. So sometimes it's about the water, sometimes it's about the electricity and road and the hotel, and sometimes about the washroom. I have all kinds of meetings about all of those. In fact, our animate world that is over here, it is not created by the aspiration of Amitabha. It is not like the Pure Land of Sukhavati. It's not naturally formed. It definitely needs our effort. It needs our diligence so that we can see the fruition, including the shrine hall that we have, where we can have classes. At the beginning of Larongar, there's no shrine hall, there's no Dharma books that could be printed. So each step that we took from then till now was not easy. Every one of us being here is not easy. Knowing that, I think we need to develop this certainty. We need to develop this kind of synergy. As long as we work together, we will be able to come to a fruition that is full of supreme merits. Therefore, over here, the Buddha said that the ones who's wise, they would definitely generate such kind of a supreme merit. I really hope that in the winter or next year, I hope all of you would practice and do whatever you have to do and you need to do. Do not give up your practice. A scholar probably only need to study the field that he really cares about. Other than that, he doesn't really need to expand to the other areas. But I really hope that all of us could have rather a wholesome outlook about what we need to do, because it's not that we just need one thing and not the other. I hope all of you can pay attention to your practice as well as all the other areas altogether. And then the Buddha continued to say that such kind of person who take delight in the worldly affairs, in those inferior actions, should be reprimanded by the wise ones. Now, the next verse is a little bit different in all the three translations. According to the Tang translation, it means that there are the ones who have already donated the majority of his wealth, but still seeks for the minority of it or a very little bit of it or the inferior part of it. And according to the Sui dynasty's translation, it means that the ones who've already given 1,000 pieces of gold, but he only want to get one piece of gold. According to the Tibetan translation, it means that one who spoke 1,000 times, the other person who can only remember one sentence out of it. This is, I guess, also could be considered as an inferior action. Anyhow, all of them are emphasizing on how it is inappropriate to take the unimportant part rather than the important part. Therefore, the wise ones should abandon all such kind of inferior karmas and actions. Rather, one should seek for the supreme dharma, practicing and all the pure precepts and harmony within the sangha benefiting sentient beings, all of those. So if one were to practice in those ways, all the Buddhas would praise such kind of person. Then Maitreya Bodhisattva addressed the Buddha saying that how rare, world-honored one, such kind of Bodhisattva who abandoned supreme diligence and then practice all the inferior things should know that this kind of person lack wisdom and have very shallow wisdom and understanding. What kind of strange bodhisattvas that are they are. So over here, let's stop now.
Chubun Solin Jova